Welcome back to the show with big foreheads and attempted murder. I'm your host, Sore Loser, and remember, a dinosaur a day keeps the girls away. If you want to skip straight into the analysis, then please click here. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy this episode. Our story begins right where the last one left off, with Sid, iDubbbz, Zippo, and Marion leaving the swamp where they were just attacked. I also wanted to say that some people pointed out some alternative names for iDubbbz, so I'll be using those interchangeably. Marion climbs a tree and we see 3 Brachiosaurs with their riders, which were a genus of sauropod dinosaur that lived in North America during the late Jurassic period. We will talk about them more in the analysis, as the writer shouts that he's found our lost MCs. The dinos approach, and look at that design, it just looks pretty good. Marion approaches and asks to be taken to a nearby town, as Schofield here is hurt. The rider drops them off at a junction, and they ride on a cart into town. We then see Parasaurolophus, which were a genus of hadrosaurid duck-billed dinosaur, who we'll be talking about later as well. And look, I know these are evolved dinosaurs, they're not supposed to be 100% accurate, but I will be calling it how I see it, which is definitely arthritis. Like, I really hate that Zippo sits like this. He's a nice guy and all, but man does he look cursed. We cut to a town center and we see Chasmosaurus, who were a genus of ceratopsid dinosaur from the late Cretaceous period, and Stenonychosaurus, who were a genus of troodontid dinosaur from the late Cretaceous as well. Our characters are dropped off, nice hat bro, and we see Marion's mother, Rosemary, who is the matriarch of this Earth farm. Sid introduces himself and Schofield, and Rosemary says that she's heard a lot about them, and that none of it is good. Okay, bitch. You're just mad you never got to experience the Wendy's 5 for 5. She says that she will take care of iDubbbz's injuries, and then we see the Brax using machines to harvest wheat. Damn, I was so close to my last video about the farming jobs thing. Marion and her mom have a catching up conversation, where Marion whips out her sunstone necklace, and she makes a face that I'm not sure I'm all that comfortable with. What is with this stone and people making weird faces? The next day, Rosemary is looking for Sid, as he is not working the fields. She finds him playing ping pong with Zippo and gets mad that he's just fucking around. By the way, Zippo got 3 points this time. Good job, Zippo. Sid says that he's not gonna be a Dinotopian, so he's not doing shit. And Rosemary replies by saying, if you want to eat our food, you better work for it. Got him. We see some shots of the farm and daily labor before we cut to Captain Cold here, who is feeling better. He finds out from Zippo that he's been out for a week. Also, side note, he is given a drink made of a plant called Octium longivus, which when regularly drunk can prolong life expectancy to 250 years. Holy shit. Then he finds out Marion has been hanging out with Sid the whole time, and this makes him jealous, so he investigates out of his window. He sees Sid telling Marion the story of Sid and Goliath, and she is mad impressed about it. He is such a scumbag. That night, Chris sees Sid sneaking out and watches as he swings from one side of the building into the girls' dorm. My wife asked why none of the girls were freaking out here, but I told her everyone was really chill in Dinotopia, which is not true later on in this episode. But anyways, Sid asks Marion if she wants to go out on a night swim, and she accepts. They share a naked kiss, and the next morning Rosemary asks why they broke the rules by sneaking out. Basically, Sid says that they were having fun, and that he's not going to belong here anyways, so it doesn't matter. Also, he keeps referring to her by her name, and she keeps asking him to refer to her as matriarch. The disrespect is real. We next see Zippo presenting his findings on the entrance to the world beneath. This shocks everyone, and this guy, Almosaur the Ankylosaur, speaks up, probably to tell everyone that he is a genus of armored dinosaur who lived in western North America during the late Cretaceous period, and that we will be talking more about them later. JK, he says that the sacred world beneath should never be violated, and that they will not be trespassing into carnivore territory, ever, even though the T-Rexes in the last episode violated territory by eating people. But whatever, we have a ceremony to participate in. The class is going to connect to the earth and the dinosaurs through the steady beat of drums and the dinos hitting of the ground. Sid says that sounds silly and gets up to go, but the beats are too strong and he falls down and is forced to emotionally connect with the dinosaurs. I think I saw that at a rave once. Afterwards, we find out it was a rather enjoyable experience for him, and it seems to have changed his outlook on some things. The next day, we see all the students getting their final assignments. One person gets the assignment to work with dolphins near the coast, and someone from the last episode let me know that in the books, There are dolphins that help bring shipwreck survivors onto land, which is a cool reference, I think, and helps explain how Sid and iDubbbz even made it to shore in the first place. Sid gets his assignment and is to stay here on the farm and work the hatchery, while iDubbbz gets the Skyback's assignment and is going to train in Canyon City. Marion and her big-ass forehead doesn't get a habitat, but is told that she will be going with iDubbbz to study Pteranodons. Next, we see our 3 MCs saying goodbye to each other and head their separate ways. I still don't like the design, but I think it's kind of growing on me. I think it would be very cool to ride a bipedal hadrosaur like the ones in Dinotopia. They make it to their destination, and we see Canyon City with pterosaurs all over. Pretty lit, if I do say so myself. And we find out that Captain Cold here is afraid of heights. A little later, the 2 meet Romana, a fellow Skyback's cadet, who shows Cold to his sleeping quarters. We cut to Sid, who is arriving at the hatchery. He meets a girl, who turns out to be Marion's little sister. Yeah, I could tell. Who shows him to the incubation room. She tells him that the warmer temperatures produce males and the colder, females. Which is kinda, sorta correct. She's talking about temperature-dependent sex determination, which has 2 patterns. Pattern 1A has a single temperature zone, where below that zone they will hatch male and female for at or above that temperature. So that's strike 1, big forehead girl. Pattern 2 has 2 zones, with males being produced in the intermediate and females produced at both extremes. That's 2 strikes for you, big forehead girl. Also, this development is seen in modern-day crocodiles and turtles, so it's very possible that this is how dinosaur eggs worked. Although, it's also very possible that some dinosaurs incubated their eggs with body heat, like modern birds do. I got my eye on you, big forehead girl. One more strike and you're out of here. She hands him an egg with 26 on it, and says that he's got to take care of it because it's his life partner. We cut to see Schofield and other cadets lined up for training, with the same instructor that saved his life in episode 1. He explains that the statues are called the Sentinels, and the air above them is ruled by the Skybaxes, and the air below them is ruled by Pteranodons, and that in order to fly, you must not have any fear in your heart. He summons his mount, and we see Quetzalcoatlus, who were a genus of pterosaur that lived in the late Cretaceous period. And, as some people pointed out in last episode, the reason they are called Skybaxes in Dinotopia is because they are a fictional species related to the real-life Quetzalcoatlus northropy. So we are rolling with that, and we'll talk about it later. We get a quick sneak peek of how Sid is handling his new parenting role, and Rosemary says to take her back to the incubation room. Wait, I thought higher temps equal male in this place. That's 3 strikes for big forehead girl. Back to Schofield though, it's time to learn how to ride. He keeps trying it over and over again, but can't seem to get it down. Honestly, I think that thing looks fun. If I ever opened a dinosaur themed bar, I'm putting that in there. Next we see Marion and her forehead studying pteranodons, and she sees an albino one getting picked on. She meets with Schofield for lunch later and tells him that she's going to make contact with it. Suddenly, the lights blink and we see that the sunstones are failing intermittently, causing some of the pteranodons to escape their territory. This same thing is also being discussed back at the Senate, where Sirius asks the hard questions about how many sunstone reserves are left, and eventually it comes out that there are no more. He proposes they do the expedition Zippo was talking about, but gets thrown out instead. And hey, I thought no weapons in Dinotopia. Those are definitely weapons. Sirius then finds Zippo in the street and asks him to come to his shop to read some ancient scrolls. The scroll in question describes yet another entrance into the world below in an underwater cave. The nerd shit will have to wait though, because Zippo sees the book that was stolen from his library, and a figure from the city museum. He threatens to report Sirius to the authorities, so Sirius fucking whacks him. And look at that leg twitch. Our man's here definitely has brain damage. Next thing we know, Zippo is being put into a sack and is dumped into a waterway. Rip Zippo, I kinda liked your ugly ass. Next we see Sid with his egg. And little girl Big Forehead walks up to tell him it's gonna be a Chasmosaurus, but pronounces it like this.
She's a Chasmosaur.
And then proceeds to say it's part of the Hadrosaur family, which it's not. It's part of the Ceratopsidae family. And far be it from me to criticize a pronunciation, but that's 5 strikes, little lady. One more and we're gonna have to take you out back and put you down. Back with iDubbbz, they continue their training with a rock climb, where he proceeds to act like a bitch the whole time, even refusing to make the final jump to write his name in the canyon wall. Look, I get it, it's far down, but you have the opportunity to ride a pterosaur. Get the fuck in there. I'm so tired of this stuff. It's like when Shinji gets all in his feelings with his giant mech suit. Like, bro, get in there and do some cool shit. You can jerk off on Asuka later. Anyways, we next see Sid's egg hatching. What a cutie. He doesn't want to name her though, so we cut to Zippo, who is actually not dead. He gets fished out and assumedly tells on Cirrus. Cutting yet again, man, there's a lot of plots happening in this episode. We see that Marion has crossed the safety barrier to make contact with the albino Pteranodon, and he tells her that he is a genus of pterosaur that lived during the late Cretaceous geological period of North America. More about them later though, because his homies roll up to politely tell Marion she should probably go back across the safety barrier. Chris runs in to help her out, and she gets a stern talking to by the commander, who tells her she is now confined to quarters. Also, damn, look at that forehead, holy shit. Back with Sid, we see him name his baby dino 26, and that she is the only surviving member of her clutch. This makes Sid want to wander the beach and think about life for a bit when he discovers an old rowboat. Seeing his ticket out of there, he gets to work repairing it with supplies that he can find. Suddenly, Cirrus shows up to tell him that Waterfall City kicked him out for asking too many questions. Yeah, okay. Sid seems to not believe this, but still needs his help to find a way through the reef. Cirrus tells him that he will get him the chart, but only if he steals the Hatchery Sunstone. Sid doesn't want to do it at first, but eventually agrees. Once again, we cut to David training, but this time with Romano. And Marion sees this from a window above and gets a little jelly. The next morning, everyone in class is graduating and gets a saddle, except for Chris, who is told he won't be getting one unless he spends the night in a Skyback's nest, because he is not yet ready. He laments his situation to Marion, who offers to climb up to the nest for the night with him. They start their harrowing journey, and about halfway through, they get into a small argument about each other's character flaws. This causes Marion to lose her focus and slip on a rock. Schofield manages to save her from a long fall, and they make it to the nest. They start to settle in for the evening, and they get to talking. Cold apologizes for starting a fight and tells Marion that he is in love with her, to which she says she is flattered. Here, hold this L. On top of that, a message bird comes to give Marion a message from Sid, which pisses off Captain Cold even more. At least they get to have a moment with the albino Pteranodon. Speaking of Sid though, we switch over to him stealing the Sunstone, while Cirrus pokes a hole in his boat. Man, they're both scumbags. He hands off the stone for the chart and sets sail. While he is doing that, 26 escapes the hatchery and goes looking for him. She spots him in the small cove, and at the same time, Sid discovers his boat is starting to sink. He spots her and tells her to go back, and she says, okay, and then jumps into the water. Sid quickly dives after her and saves the small dino from drowning, but loses his boat in the process. After all that excitement, it's time for more because it's graduation time for iDubbbz. Each cadet only gets one shot to try and call a Skyback, and if it doesn't show, then you are discharged from the Corps. Romana is up first, and her Skyback comes right away. She flies off with it, and next it's Schofield's turn. Sid then randomly shows up for some reason to watch, as his brother tries his best but doesn't have enough Sigma energy to make the cut. He is understandably upset and starts to pack up his stuff, but has an idea. He's just gonna try it again. Why hasn't anyone else tried that? Well, everyone watches him grab his saddle again and step up to call a Skyback. What shows up, however, is the albino Pteranodon, which he promptly hops on and flies away to everyone's amazement. And that's our summary. Wow, this show is really starting to grow on me. It's just so cool. What about you guys? Let me know what you think down in the comments. So, how do these dinos compare? Well, let's start with the Brachiosaurus. These are Brachiosaurus altithorax, or deep chest arm lizard, which roamed North America during the late Jurassic period. These sauropods were estimated to grow between 59 and 72 feet long, weighing about 31 to 51 tons. So our size matches here, but what about the design? Well, this design has Giraffatitan and Brachiosaurus elements combined. It has a large head and the neck is slim near the jaw, like Giraffatitan. But one thing I will say is that the Giraffatitan did not have shoulder sockets that stuck out. And it looks like that in this depiction, the shoulders do actually jut out a bit, which leans more towards the Brach design. Brachiosaurus also had a longer tail than Giraffatitan, but we don't have any other large sauropods to compare it to in this episode. Overall, I like the design. It is pretty easy to depict Brachiosaurus with Giraffatitan head and neck, so I'm not going to hold it against them too much. Something I do find interesting about the Brachiosaurus, though, is the use of air sacs in its biology. The respiratory system used air sacs, much like modern birds, but it did not stop there. These air sacs were also connected to much of the skeleton via channels. These branches, called diverticula, lighten the skeleton greatly. It's not entirely understood what advantage this has, but it may be related to the animal's thermoregulation. In popular media, the sheer size of the Brachiosaurus made it iconic and recognizable. In 1991, a main belt asteroid was named 9954 Brachiosaurus, in honor of the genus. It was featured in Jurassic Park, where there too it was based off the Giraffatitan design. Its Jurassic Park digital model was also used to create the Ronto in Star Wars. Next we have Parasaurolophus, and based on the crest shape, I'll take a stab and say it's Parasaurolophus walkeri, or near-crested lizard. They roamed western North America during the late Cretaceous period, and they were thought to grow over 30 feet long and weigh about 5 tons. With that being said, these two depictions could not be more different. The most glaring is the overall bipedal design of the Dinotopian specimen, versus the more quadrupedal real-life counterpart. The forelimbs are significantly shorter with more pronounced digits, and the overall size seems to be smaller. Something I did find interesting was the flatness of its crest, because there are many theories as to the purpose of these crests, but some are thermoregulation, sexual and species display, and my favorite, a sound enhancer. If the Dinotopian specimens have flat crests, I imagine their function might also be changed. Parasaurolophus is also an iconic dinosaur that has been featured in many movies, including The Land Before Time, Jurassic Park, The Magic School Bus, Jurassic World, and here I called it in the movie 65. Next, we have Chasmosaurus, and based on the horns, I would say this is Chasmosaurus belli, or opening lizard. They grazed around North America during the late Cretaceous period, and were thought to grow between 14.1 and 15.7 feet long, and they were thought to weigh between 2,000 and 5,000 pounds. The reason I think this is belli is because the horns are not too long, and they point straight out, where in russelli, the brow horns are a bit longer and they curve back slightly. I think this design is quite nice in Dinotopia, definitely one of the more accurate ones. Something I think is interesting about Chasmosaurus is the debate around its horns and frills. Its horns are considered to be too short for defensive weapons, so that leaves the frill. It's thought that the frill was used to appear imposing, or was used for thermoregulation. But what do you think it was used for? Let me know down in the comment section. I would consider Chasmosaurus to be a not very iconic dinosaur, only showing up in a few popular media outlets, such as Planet Dinosaur and Dinosauria, but that's okay, we still love you. Next up, we have Stenonychosaurus, with only one species, Stenonychosaurus inequalis, or narrowed lizard claw. They were thought to have lived in North America during the late Cretaceous period, and they were thought to grow around 8 feet in length and weigh about 77 pounds. And man, what is there to say about this design? Honestly, I think the Steno design is cursed in Dinotopia, especially Zippo. Bear with me because I'm going to defend it here in a minute, but I don't like the skull shape, I don't like how Zippo's lips move, the eye placement is off, his teeth are cone-shaped for some reason, the foot is missing its sickle-like claw, and Stenonychosaurus is often depicted with feathers, so Zippo might be naked. The chest also bothers me, with it being broad because of the two connected arms having more motion rather than the traditional shape and function. But, huge but, these are evolved dinosaurs, right? Well, the design changes are more in-depth than you might think. In 1982, Dale A. Russell, the curator of vertebra fossils at the National Museum of Canada in Ottawa, created a possible evolutionary path for the steno, giving birth to the dinosauroid. Yes, this widely used image is the theorized evolution of Stenonychosaurus. So that brings us back to the Dinotopian specimen. Think of them as the in-between species on the way to this form. Suddenly, the wide chest and radical placement of anatomical structures has a little bit more merit. In Dinotopia, it also makes sense that the stenos are reading and actively engaged in the sciences, as they had one of the largest brains of any dinosaur relative to its mass. I will say though, the dinosauroid evolutionary path was widely criticized, so take that with a bit of grain of salt. Next up is Quetzalcoatlus, with the species in Dinotopia being Quetzalcoatlus skybacks, or feathered serpent. Their wingspan was about 10 meters, and they had a very large crest on their head, with their body being a tan color, and the wings being very colorful, with each individual having a different variety of these colors. Each wing had 3 small clawed fingers, and they had very small tails. As this is a fictional species, I don't much want to compare it to Northropy, as it's designed to be different. But I did want to point out that the ones in the show have blue crests on their head. Also, I think the way that they sit is rather awkward. They're supposed to have their wings folded in. Lastly, we also see the way that these pterosaurs launch themselves back into flight, jumping with their 2 legs. It has been discovered that most pterosaurs, including Quetzalcoatlus northropy, would launch themselves using both their legs and forelimbs to help achieve flight. And lastly, we have the pteranodons, with these being Pteranodon longiceps, or long-headed toothless wing. They lived in North America during the late Cretaceous, and had a wingspan of about 18 feet for males and 12 for females. As I don't think we saw any females in this episode, we will just be talking about the males. This is one of the more accurate depictions in this show, with a few exceptions. They got the overall details correct, and even left them toothless, which I appreciate. I think the neck is rather skinny though, and I would have liked to see a more uniform beak shape as well. Now, we don't see if there's any water down there where they live in Canyon City, but pteranodons in real life lived around the western interior seaway, where they feasted on fish. If there is no water here, then what exactly are they eating? Now, Pteranodon is a very iconic pterosaur, being featured in many films, and is one of the most recognizable pterosaurs. That being said, they bring up some interesting questions in Dinotopia. We often see Dinotopian society and how each person and dinosaur fits into that society. What we don't see is how the predators and these pteranodons fit into their society. What is their role here? Are they just dickheads that wait to attack people when they get the chance? In some of my other reviews, I like to talk about the role the dinosaur fills in the movie versus the niche that they filled in real life. But in Dinotopia, each dinosaur or pterosaur fills a role in society rather than nature. So hopefully we will find that out in future episodes. Alright, and that's the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please stay tuned as King Kong is coming next, and I have plans for the Turok game. Sorry if I sounded weird, I am the illest around. Haha. I hope y'all have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one.